Come right out here. Now, if Boozer is going to be open, you'll be able to tell it right now, all right? Then go ahead and hit Boozer. Boom. If he's not open, go ahead and drift out this way, and then reverse right around, Carl, you're left-handed, and hit Hap down the sideline or sidewall, whichever one's open.
In my wildest imagination, I never expected Jim would ever be a high school football coach in this whole world. How could he ever be a high school football coach? I just can't believe it. Football at that, when they wouldn't even let him play football.
I suppose it's a little unusual to be a football coach never having played organized football.
As Jim's wife, I never had any doubts that he could coach football. I never had any doubts that he could do anything he set his mind to do.
Straight back this way. When you see Sigurdsson, look this way so you see him out of the corner of your eye. Turn right around and run around him that way.
Jim Fourtner is the coach's name. From the sidelines, he looks just like any other young coach, getting his team ready for a game. But there is a significant difference. Jim has no legs. He was born that way in a small Texas town to parents who couldn't afford to get him expensive artificial limbs. So it was decided he should go with his Aunt Johnny to her home in Seattle for those new legs. Jimmy Fourtner was about 2 years old when his Aunt John got him his new legs. These were just the first of many sets Jimmy would need as he grew up. It was a severe financial strain for Aunt John, who was single. In fact, Aunt John could not afford the expense when he needed a second pair. A Seattle newspaper, the Post-Intelligencer, heard about Jimmy and appealed for financial help from readers in stories like these. Newspaper readers came through with enough money for Jimmy's legs. Aunt John was a strong and independent woman who was determined that her nephew would grow up to be strong and independent.
Jim had a lot of coaching from me about he was not going to be crippled. He was not going to be moody and pouty and crying and condemning the world and me and everybody else about being crippled.
A couple of boys who lived across the alley got Jim started playing baseball.
Catch, Jimmy.
They always included him in their games of catch in the backyard. He was only 5, and occasionally he'd feel the sting of missing the hardball.
Sorry.
But the seeds of competition were being planted in the little kid without legs. Jimmy was developing an attitude that he could do anything that any other kid could do.
Jim?
Jim never considered himself crippled. He'd do anything. Ride a trike, roller skate, anything. In fact, he broke a leg bone coming down the hill on a trike. He would try impossible things just to prove he was not a cripple.
He had a determination about him even then. By the time the broken bone had healed, Jimmy needed another pair of those expensive artificial limbs. Again, the PI brought it to the public's attention, and an American Legion Jimmy Fourtner Fund was established. Pain from those artificial legs was something Jimmy would have to learn to live with the rest of his life.
I hurt.
Your legs hurt, darling?
Yeah, real bad.
Well, you know I can't carry you.
Is it long ways to go?
It's pretty far, but we can make it. Come on, Jimmy.
Jimmy's story appealed to PI sports editor Royal Brome. The newspaper at that time sponsored the annual Washington State High School All-Star Game. The guest of honor at the 1949 contest was to be Monty Stratton. the Chicago White Sox star who pitched big league baseball on an artificial leg after a hunting accident. Brome took Stratton out to meet the legless boy.
Jimmy, you remember me, Royal Brome. Now, who do you think this big, tall fella is?
Marty Stratton.
Well, that's sure right, Jimmy. I'm mighty proud to know you.
Now, Jimmy, you know about our big all-star game at the ballpark tonight? Well, we'd like to have you with us, and we want you to suit up for it. Go ahead, take it. Put it on. It's all yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're sure welcome.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Isn't he a nice little boy?
Oh, I'll say.
You know, I guess you know about my leg, do you, Jimmy?
You have a one leg just like mine.
That's right, but sure didn't keep me out of baseball.
Does your leg hurt sometimes?
Sometimes. But you know, Jimmy, I think it's worth it. You remember that. I think it's well worth it. Now, I got a special surprise for you folks tonight. You've been reading about little Jimmy Fourtner in your newspapers. Well, we got him to come out here tonight so I could pitch him a few. Jimmy, he's kind of fixed up like me, only he's got two wooden legs. I want you to meet him. Come on out here, Jimmy. I need me a batter.
Stratton's visit made Jimmy even more interested in baseball. And when he became old enough for Little League, nothing in the world mattered more to him. He tried out for one of the teams, and it got down to one remaining uniform between Jimmy and two other boys. Aunt John remembers the day the last uniform was to be given out.
Jim had already been kind of crying, and I was getting after him, telling him, you know, you're not to cry, you're a big boy, and if you don't make the team, you don't make it. That's just the way it is.
Aunt John, I got my uniform.
Oh, Jimmy, I knew it.
I got it.
Jimmy, let's see that uniform. My
By this time, Aunt John had married Paul Barry, and they'd moved from the apartment building where Jimmy had learned to play catch to this house, which would be Jim's home as he became more and more active in baseball. Jimmy was so active, his artificial limbs took a beating. He still laughs about the time he rounded third base and was heading home when his left foot broke off and he fell. Jimmy grabbed that broken foot, still in its sock, and tossed it on home plate. Jimmy scored enough runs, though, and got enough hits to be voted into the Little League's All-Star team. It was a personal triumph in the field of athletics and a source of pride for a youngster who wanted only to be regarded as equal to anyone. When Jim Fourtner entered high school, he received the first of many rejections he was to encounter because he was born without normal legs. Jim wanted to turn out for the high school football team. Big and strong, he'd played sandlot football for years. Some of the kids he'd played with and against were on the team, and Jim wanted to be part of it. However, state regulations barred players with artificial limbs. Jim didn't sulk over the disappointment. He played trumpet in the high school band. Along with the rest of the band, he played and marched at ball games and in parades, in spite of constant chafing from his artificial legs. Jim also played church league basketball, bowled, and in PE classes wrestled and swam. He still recalls the pain involved with basketball.
Basketball was always the most painful for me because of the running and the changing of directions, the sweating. It was just tough on my legs.
It was in baseball, of course, that Jim shined. Tony Dickinson was the high school baseball coach.
Jim was an outstanding baseball player. He played for our team on the varsity for 3 years. He was a first baseman, and he really hit that ball because he had such tremendous upper body strength and good hand-eye coordination. Jimmy was selected the captain and won the Inspiration Award his last year. He led the league in RBIs, led the team in doubles. He would hit that ball a ton and come in sliding into second base with a double. But such an inspiration.
Jim dated several girls in high school, but with Karen Barkas, it was a case of opposites attracting. Karen was quiet and somewhat shy, a real contrast to Jim's outgoing personality. A date with Karen on a ferry boat became one of Jim's embarrassing moments.
Oh, no.
Oh, Jim. Can you fix it?
It's difficult to impress a date when your foot breaks and you're not carrying a toolbox.
No problem. Come on.
But it is a problem, and a fear returns. A fear of being treated differently. Something he desperately wants to avoid. After graduating from high school, Jim enrolled in the University of Washington. He wanted to become a physical education teacher and maybe coach some baseball. But he encountered a roadblock. The PE Department Admissions Committee rejected his application to major in physical education. He was being denied access to the field in which he wanted to specialize. Dr. Eric Hughes, gymnastics coach and instructor, was one of those against allowing a footless freshman to major in PE.
We were rather particular in those days of who we accepted. They needed a certain amount of intelligence, of course, and grade point, but we also wanted good, sound physical specimens to represent the field. And when he first talked to a counselor to ask to come into our department, he was advised not to do this, that he should look for another field for which he was better suited.
Jim was not about to give up without a fight. He enrolled in PE courses, including gymnastics, to prove that he could be just as good at these activities as other physical education majors. Jim knew that his future as a teacher and coach depended on the outcome of his battle to gain approval. After working with Jim in his gymnastics class, Dr. Hughes became Fourtner's most vocal advocate.
I could see that he had such a strong desire to do this, and that he would be a great example in our profession, that the young students that he was teaching could not only look up to him as a good performer, because he certainly was, but look up to him as the type of individual with the drive that would give them inspiration to show some of this quality in their lives.
The determination instilled by Aunt John so long ago paid off for Jim in that college freshman year. With the support of Dr. Hughes and others, Jim's application to major in physical education was approved in a formal vote. Jim played one season of freshman baseball at the university. He was the starting first baseman for about half of the Frosh games in what was to be his final season of competition for a scholastic team. The baseball coach did give Jim an appreciation of the conditioning athletes need. Every day, the baseball players had to do a drill called running the steps. Tough enough for anyone with good legs, it was murder for Jim. Because of the exhaustion and the pain of running steps with his artificial legs, Jim became ill every day. But every day, he'd return to those dreaded steps. His class load and part-time jobs like washing dishes at a fish and chip shop prompted Jim to drop baseball in favor of his studies after that freshman year. Washing dishes every night after midnight was no fun, but it did help put him through college. Jim and Karen were married shortly before he graduated. After graduation, he got a teaching job in the small town of Rochester, Washington, where he was also named assistant football and head baseball coach. They bought a mobile home, but faced a whole summer with no steady income till school started again. Aunt John and her husband would bring food on their weekly visits, but money was tough to come by.
What?
I got it. I got the job. I got the job. I got the job.
Jim found some part-time work, including one job he'll never forget. The job was a simple one. Deliver 24,000 raw eggs to a supermarket in the city. But do it gently. It never occurred to rookie egg truck driver Jim Fourtner that a guy could break 24,000 eggs his first day on the job. And his last day on the job. The assistant coach's job at Rochester High School was a milestone in Jim Fourtner's life.
You didn't quite get him off quick enough on that snap count. And when you pull in as a guard, you make sure you stay lower so they can't see you come to the last minute. That's the point of that trap. It's a surprise, okay?
He realized there that what he wanted most was to be a football coach. Game strategy fascinated him. He became totally involved in learning about the game that he'd been barred from playing.
Okay, couple things now.
He also learned to motivate players and fans.
Mr. Jim Fourtner.
On behalf of the coaches, I can promise you this. We're not going to be embarrassed anymore. The coaches have vowed, and the players have vowed, that Rochester is going to end this habit of losing. We're going to win tonight. All right, who's going to win? I can't hear you. Who's going to win? Who are we going to beat?
That one season at Rochester gave Jim Fourtner a dream to become a head football coach.
All right, Jeff, come here.
He knew that some schools were reluctant to hire a head coach who had never played the game, but he was determined to fulfill that dream.
As soon as you can, okay? Call out again.
Rochester already had its head coach, so Jim and Karen decided to return to Seattle, where there were more opportunities. That summer, he came back to Rochester to visit his former quarterback, Larry Fagerness, who was hospitalized due to a construction accident.
How do you feel?
Kind of dopey.
Yeah, I feel that way myself once in a while.
Coach, it hurts.
You better believe it hurts. You'll never totally get rid of the pain either. But life is worth a little pain.
Larry Fagernes had his right leg amputated and went on to become a successful attorney.
Seeing what Jim could accomplish with 2 artificial legs gave me the confidence to overcome a similar type of circumstance when I lost one of my legs in an accident. Also, seeing the progress that Jim made during the time that I knew him and the accomplishments that he set out for himself gave me the confidence to overcome my situation and to attain the goals that I set out for myself.
We're going to have a 52 slant right.
Jobs were scarce in the Seattle area that fall, but Jim did manage to find employment as a substitute teacher and assistant football coach at a small school in suburban Seattle. After 4 years as an assistant, he was given a 1-year probationary contract as the school's head football coach. He still had to prove he could be a successful coach in a sport he had never been allowed to play. In addition, the school did not have a winning tradition in football.
Last play, you guys. Let's make it good.
In his second season, Fourtner turned the program around. In his 4th and final year there, Tyee High School was ranked #1 in the state most of the season and lost its league championship by the slim margin of 3 points.
Okay, good hustle. Hit the showers. All right. Who are you going to beat this week? Who are you going to beat this week? Who are you going to beat this week?
During that coaching stint, the Fourtners decided to have a family.
You see the doctor?
Yes.
Well, what'd he say?
He still said the odds are in favor of having a normal baby.
Hope he's right.
Hey, everything's going to be fine. The doctor said the same thing as all those books we studied on heredity. Our baby will be just perfect. Don't worry.
Well, all that happened some time ago. Karen had her baby, a boy, perfectly formed, as was his younger sister, born a few years later. And what about Jim Fourtner's football coaching career? Listen.
The first half is nearing an end, and the green-jerseyed Evergreen Wolverines are trailing by a score of 12-0. Jim Fourtner is in his first season as head coach at Evergreen after moving from Tyee High School, and this is a big game for Fourtner's team. To stay in the race for a playoff spot, Evergreen must win this game. But so far, the Wolverines have been unable to generate any scoring. Coach Fourtner will have to come up with something at halftime if he expects to make it into the state playoffs.
All right, listen up, fellas. We've got with our groups, and we got all the X's and O's we're going to need, and I think you know as well as I do that that's not what's going to win this game tonight. We made some mistakes. We're behind right now. That's not what concerns me. What concerns me is when we came in this locker room, there were some heads that were down. When your head is down, that's a symbol of defeat, of quitting. We can't have any of that here. People that are active, alert, and winners have their heads up. Losers carry their heads low. Some people, it takes a play for their heads to go down. One bad play and their heads can go down. Other people, it takes a quarter. Other people, a bad half like we've just had, maybe a bad game. But I'll tell you what, those are the losers. The winners are the ones that never look down.
What a game. It's been a remarkable quarter for Evergreen. The Wolverines were still behind 12-0, but they got 7 points early in this quarter. And now Evergreen is driving again. The game is almost over, but Evergreen, still behind 12-7, has marched the ball to the 2-yard line. Here's a handoff to the fullback, and he's over for a touchdown, giving Evergreen the lead for the first time. A great comeback for Evergreen and its first-year coach, Jim Fourtner, a guy who was born without legs and who never played organized football. Coach Fourtner obviously fired up his team during halftime because they came back to win the game 14-12. This victory gives Fourtner's team a spot in the state championship playoffs. Evergreen is back among the high school football powers.
I think if I had any advice to give someone who is handicapped, it would be this. Don't let people convince you that you are handicapped. I'm probably the least handicapped person I know. It's a matter of what you think and what you do, not what other people think and do. There are perfectly normal people sitting around doing nothing. They are the ones who are handicapped. Those who have everything going for them and do nothing.
So much to